Thiruvan Saranai, JayaShri Maatha. It's a pleasure, and I'm really thankful to give this opportunity to ask 4 questions that I think that everybody has to get to know about this. The first question is, why do you do what you do?
Thiruvan Saranai. So, first question is, why do I do what I do? It is because I understand as a human being the ultimate purpose of being a human is to be enlightened, is to tap into this interesting word called Buddha consciousness, to liberate from all roots and causes of suffering. I understand this very well because for many years in this lifetime, and certainly for many lives before this life, I have been seeking, searching, and wanting to liberate. And I remember very well, specifically in this lifetime, how much I suffered. In the name of living life, what was actually happening was suffering. I was seeking liberation or happiness or satisfaction in worldly things, in relationships, in money, in education, even in physical pleasures. But I came to a point in my life and fully realized there's nothing called a physical existence out there. It is a lie, it's a delusion, and this sense of separation between the concept called I and the world outside creates this duality in human consciousness to a level that rift, that sense of separation, tear people apart, make people suffer continuously. And I think it is unnecessary once you realize that you are the cause of all suffering and there is a way out of it. So I have been instrumental in bringing quite a lot of new knowledge, thought leadership to this country, specifically in the realm of applied psychology. That happened over the last 15 plus years. So that is, let's say, that's my so-called professional life. And in terms of living life for a purpose extends much beyond that. I remember from an early age wanting to be enlightened and declaring these statements to my parents and friends, taking very different, unorthodox, challenging decisions as a young girl, even as a young woman, because if there was one thing that mattered to me most, irrespective of my worldly success, that was to be enlightened, fully enlightened, to be fully liberated from suffering, and to end the samsara, or so-called rebecoming process, stopping the whole affair of wanting to come into another life in another form. I really wanted to end it. So, and I knew it. So why I do what I do now as a spiritual teacher or a guide, as an enlightened teacher, what I'm doing is to now help those just like me. Once I used to be that suffering woman, the individual who needed help to be enlightened. So why I do what I do is to help those who really, really, absolutely determined to be enlightened, fully enlightened during this lifetime.
Thank you. My second question is, I'm aware that it is you who introduced technical or professional LLP training in Sri Lanka, and now you talk about enlightenment. What is this shift?
Yes. So first let me tell you very briefly what NLP is all about, or neuro-linguistic programming. So it was year 2007 when I became like a fully certified master practitioner and a trainer training from overseas, from Australia. Then I came to Sri Lanka, and I wanted to share that knowledge with the world, especially with the people in my country, because that time I was suffering in deep depression. As a young woman, I was very well educated and I was extremely successful according to the conventional standards of success. However, I was continuously unhappy, sick, getting sick physically, and crying and worrying about the future, angry and agitated all the time. I could not even enjoy the little luxuries I had in my life, but what the luxuries I had was not little, like physical comforts and even the relationships. The best things were given in my life. Interestingly, I have been fortunate in receiving so-called best things as a woman, but unfortunately, I didn't have the right mindset to enjoy them. Part of it is that I was, from early days, I was determined to create my own destiny. So the so-called luxuries, I manifested with my intention and determination and willpower. However, I did not know how to enjoy them and be happy and peaceful. So technically speaking, I was suffering in depression. So that time I wasn't a psychologist or a coach or a therapist. So during one of those experiences where I was taken to a psychologist to get help, I was only 26 years old at that time. And in that experience, I remember feeling absolutely lonely and separated from the world, and feeling helpless to a level that not even my so-called loved ones could help me. I felt absolutely isolated and like living in a dark space. So in front of that psychologist, he was asking certain questions. I cannot even remember hearing specific content because I was so lost in my own thoughts. And in that moment, the intensity of the suffering I felt was so severe. I was like thinking to myself, oh my God, if I'm going through this kind of a pain and suffering, how many women out there must be going through the same or worse? Then I decided then and there that I'm going to become a person. I have to do something about it, essentially, because I know the pain. Then that interesting life-changing moment, which I call as a moment of truth, I transformed that pain into a purpose, to a story. I created a legend around this subject called NLP, and I became the pioneering leader of professional NLP training in Sri Lanka. So that's a little story which I think is very useful for you to know before knowing NLP. So because I was psychologically damaged and disturbed and hurt and imbalanced, I found NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, was the subject that helped me begin to heal my childhood traumas, and thereafter all those psychological damages I caused on myself, not knowing how the mind works. So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. Fundamentally, it is just like applied psychology. What it says is, you use your words or language, both the verbal and the non-verbal components of a language, in a way that it influences your neurology, nervous system, so that your language empowers you or change your programming or behaviors. So let's say I say a positive word, my brain recognizes that, and then I will behave accordingly. I think a positive word, my brain recognizes that, and my nervous system gets charged with that positive energy, and I'm able to behave positively. That is the essence, the very simplest way. That is the essence of what NLP is all about. We are consciously using our language that we speak, and also the language we used to think, to influence our own chemistry in the body, thereby to behave in a meaningful way, so that we can have the results we desire in our life. So that's very briefly my beginning into this psychology field, and finding out a way of helping myself first to heal my mind. I would categorically say heal my mind or thought processes. NLP helped me. Then after practicing this for like becoming a master and a known person for this, holding almost like the authority for this subject in the country, and being able to really clearly explain and teach people what it is, and transforming more than 100,000 plus people's lives directly through my training, coaching, and other interventions, I found that it's not the end. I came to a success, even healing myself internally and having almost like a born again, like a new rebirth kind of experience through NLP. Plus, there's another subject that I mastered that's called Reiki, or energy healing. And meditation was part of my life from age 3 anyway. Then I realized there's no end to it. I realized even this success is not fulfilling. Then I was more introspective. Like I started letting go of the worldly affairs more and more and more. And then I realized I have the seeds of what Buddha said to this world. Those seeds of enlightenment is still there within me. Meaning I'm not fully enlightened yet. I'm a successful woman, I'm a successful human being, and I'm a very good human being, but that's not the end. So then I had to consciously take this journey towards being enlightened. Means to learning how to stop the mind with my will. In other words, I understood that I'm not the body, I'm not in the physical body, I'm not my mind either, and finally you are left with your so-called consciousness. That's the first I. And then I realized I'm not that consciousness either. Then you come to a place where you can consciously modulate, moderate, and navigate through all these 3 variables at your will. This is really liberating, because now there's no one to die as well. Initially, I was worrying about re-becoming, but there's no question of death either. So detaching from all these levels of identifications at the body, mind, and even at the consciousness level is called, in a simplest way, enlightenment. But I must state here, one must not get carried away so much with this simplistic explanation, because when you do it, it takes time. It takes a toll on it really hard. It's a really, I would say, the most difficult experience for a human being. Because you really, it's almost like you're consciously killing yourself. You're consciously dying. People would think like surfing in extreme weather conditions is an adventure, and hiking Himalaya is difficult. Well, none of it is in comparison when you take being enlightened is the most difficult, and I think that is why very, very, very few people have been enlightened, and certainly very few have shared their story with the world. So now I have just decided to sing my song, so you're hearing it from me.
Thank you so much. My third question is, you said that this experience happened during a 7-day meditation retreat. Was that all to your journey, or there's much more to the experience?
Certainly the pinnacle happened during a 7-day meditation retreat last year, that is November 2019. But at the very beginning of that month, I was also in a 4-day program, intensive program, meditation program with the same teacher. So altogether 11 days intensive work about the mind. But I have to say that is where the final so-called enlightenment experience took place during those 7 days. After the 4 days, then the 7 days, and on the 6th day, this all dawned on me. It just happened so naturally. It was like let's say you plant a tree, you nurture with the hope that someday it will bear fruit. There were all reasons for you to give up the hopes of having fruits, but with all adversities, you keep nurturing the tree, and then suddenly, in a very totally in an unexpected manner, there is a flower bloomed. So I think people who do gardening knows this very well, right? They get into gardening, hardly initially know anything about it. They make a lot of mistakes, but they keep doing it because they really love to do that. And then suddenly one day when you wake up, you see a bud. Then you have to be patient enough, because sometimes certain buds get destroyed even at the bud stage. But the happiest moment is like you suddenly see the bud growing into a bigger bud, and then slowly blooming, and then now into a full blossom. And it smells so nice, right? And there are a lot of, say, butterflies and bees around, and you're sharing the joy of the flower blooming with everyone else. It's a nice feeling. So I think that's exactly what even I'm doing now. So that what happened was only an outcome of many years of work, conscious, deliberate, intensive, perseverance, effort. That I must state it. Now I'm 40 years old, and I remember meditating since age 3. My parents used to take me, specifically my mother. Of course, father supported. They take us to the temple for every prayer, and I would sit down for meditation. When instructions given to concentrate on breathing for 1 hour, I could just do that for 1 hour. There was no question that my mind would get disturbed. I would understand how to practice, let's say, Asubha Bhavana, or to understand the components of the body. Now I was just around 3-4 years old. And my mother would train us to do the daily rituals every morning and evening for 1 hour. So I was a very small child. I remember me watching my own body, kind of staying outside of my body, and watching, raising my hands, holding it up on the forehead, and doing the rituals so diligently. Very tiny child. Now I wonder, in retrospectively, I wonder how I remember the image. It seems that I was living out of my body. Possibly I saw that my own self, right? How could I say that without me even seeing a photograph of my own self? So seems like I've had those experiences even from early days. Then I went to Colombo, Visakha Vidyalaya in Colombo, and then after my O-levels, it's a free time, so I would just find some random book about meditation and then practice meditation by myself to a level I think, now that I know what those things are, that they call as Ashta Samapatti. Now I realize I have experienced all those at a very early age. So now when I consciously started going into a teacher and sort of fully deciding, like, no more I'm interested in worldly affairs and I'm going to dedicate my life now, that I can't postpone it anymore. That's what I felt last year. Towards the end of last year, I decided, okay, I'm going to take that leap, because there's no way I will get back to this mundane worldly way of living. I came to that kind of realization towards somewhere, let's say September or so. Then with that feeling, I was looking for a right teacher, and of course, the universe guided me, and my own destiny, let's say, or my own karma guided me to this teacher who knew how to put things in perspective and also hold space for me to have this wonderful experience. So now I spoke to you very briefly about my, like, let's say 37 plus years of conscious, diligent, deliberate work towards enlightenment, because I used to declare about being enlightened and this is my last life as early as age 3 or 4, you know. So my parents would have found this very like nonsense at that age, because I was a great student, like great child with great capability to study very well. So they would have ignored those information, and actually they worried once that I would become a nun. So once they even consciously stopped me, forcefully stopped me meditating. I remember that. And I remember resisting it very much and even trying to like hate them for what they did. So happiest time of my life was months spent meditating by myself. So even as a young woman, I would travel to India, I'll travel to places, not seeking anything particularly. I must state that. I was just, like floating. I used to identify myself as like a cloud just floating in the sky without any particular sense of direction, but trusting my intuition. I would guide my body, mind, and experience things. So when everything when everything was realized, then I could make sense of what was happening in my life. How I let go of things as a young woman, and an average woman won't let go of certain things. That I felt as if I'm like a dewdrop on a lotus leaf. So because I was not getting attached to a thing on earth, but I was fairly successful in the eyes of the world. I was successful. So my story about this life very briefly is that there were many experiences of, like, say, out of body experience and fully realizing I'm not the body. As early as age 10, I realized there's only clean, pure actions in this world. There's no doer, which we now call as like like pirisidu kriya, or like there are simply pure actions, like there's no doer or something done. It's like a flower blooming. Flower doesn't know it's blooming. Tree doesn't know, but it's a natural process. But when a human being is enlightened, people have so many questions about it, and because human consciousness is very complicated, so the mind does not understand this completeness. Mind lives in duality and single pointedness. Anytime mind is only perceiving one aspect of life, therefore it is missing the other. So mind's nature is to question anyway, but there are once in a while human beings getting this, liberated from the duality. It just happens partly because of the conscious work they have done, partly because that's how it is, right? So however, the sense of I remember that I have done conscious diligent work, not only now this life, for those people who can relate to this idea, that is there's certainly the idea of I that existed even before. So for many, many lives, let's say since the time of sense of I came into existence, I was only looking to be one with the Buddha consciousness, to be enlightened, to end the continuous suffering. And I, of course, I think seems to have chosen a specific way of experiencing it too, that is to be able to express it to the world and make many, many more Buddhas, many, many more Arihants, many more people who liberate and help many more people. It is very certain to me that I have chosen that kind of a path.
Thank you very much for your explanations. And my final question is, what message you have to the world or the people in general?
I would make it very brief, so that one can hear these words very specifically. First one, do not trust your mind. You are not your mind. So don't be fooled by the content of the mind. Mind is equivalent to Maya. So mind lives in duality. Mind doesn't know the full truth. You have to find out a way to liberate from your own mind content and its incessant activity. And I say to you, it's possible. If a mind was created and if one can perceive it, if one can become conscious of it, then one can become conscious of the mechanics of it also. Means you will be able to stop this machine which creates. Mind is the machine which creates. So if you want to stop creation, you will learn the mechanics too, right? Yeah. The second message I have for the people who's listening to this is that you are not your body as well. The physical body is only a temple, the temple you live in, or the vehicle you drive in. You're the kind of your real identity is that you are the driver or the essence of the flower. So let's say you take a petal of a flower. You're not the flower. The petal is not the flower. Stem is not the flower. 5 petals, still not the flower. But the full package still will have an essence, seed. That's essentially who you are. So people must learn to detach this sense of identification they have towards their physical existence, physical body, that I am living in this body. That has to be first eased off, then detached, and finally I'm done. I'm not my body, like a full-scale realization. In fact, according to the Buddhist way of explanation, that's the first level of enlightenment, that you're learning, I'm not the body. Then, of course, you learn, I'm not the mind as well. It is a gradual process. And the third message I have to give to the world is this. Buddhism, or Buddha's message, because people refer, even when they hear these words now, when they hear the word Buddha, immediately what comes to the mind is an image of a Buddha statue or a sense, like an idea of a person, like a figure, a human being. Well, that is the first place you operate to understand it, because you are also perceiving yourself to be like a being and an animal or human, a form. So therefore you identify Buddha also in the same way. So you have to be very mindful of this, because as long as you do that, you will try to find Buddha's message in the Buddha statue or the so-called scriptures that they said he has left in the world. His words are in the scriptures, and perhaps then get attached to another human figure, that is the Sangha or the monks who are communicating this message. Then you're definitely going to miss the point. Certainly going to miss the point, because Buddha nature is a pure positive consciousness that really heals the world and liberate. Of course, it comes from a human figure to the human beings and the other beings. Of course, the messenger is in the human form, but don't get carried away with it. Then you will not get the essence or the message of the Buddha. Even Buddha said to the world, do you want to see me? Do you want to find me? Then look it in the Dhamma. The day you find Dhamma or meet head-on with Dhamma or realize Dhamma, you will find me. He never said you see me first and then you will get Dhamma. No. It was the other way around. So Dhamma is actually inside of you. It is not to be found outside in the world, in a person, in a teacher, in a book. It is only inside of you. Of course, the teacher and the books will give you some guidance as to the words will be spoken to you as to which direction you should take. And if you are getting into wrong direction, will guide you until you get to a point of self-realization. Thereafter, you let go of the scriptures and the teachers and even that very Dhamma that led you to that realization. It is no longer needed. It starts with a word and ends with a no word. So no words has to be explained through words. this is this whole irony of truth. That's why truth was always misunderstood by people for years and years and years and lives on earth. And many masters and teachers came and they shared the truth with the world, but people always misunderstood because truth is beyond words. All right. So Dhamma of Buddha, it is not a person, but yes, that's the first point you begin to respect and learn and appreciate. But keep at the back of your mind, it's a pure positive energy and a consciousness in this universe. And Dhamma of Buddha is for the whole mankind. Non-Buddhist, the Buddha was not a Buddhist, first of all. so and if a Buddhist person, like someone who holds the label of a Buddhism, who is hearing this message, my message to you is that if you think you are a Buddhist, your first and the ultimate priority in your life is to be enlightened, nothing but that. You cannot be doing many other worldly things and call yourself a Buddhist. It's not right. You can't call yourself a Buddhist. So if a non-Buddhist hearing this message, I would say, please come on board, listen to this Dhamma. If you think we can be the right teacher, with an open mind, with a kind heart, with a genuine intention, come, seek, see for yourself, then you can be liberated. So if a non-Buddhist is interested in Buddhist way of enlightenment, that is because such a person has perceived deep pain in life. Without that, there won't be any interest towards liberating from pain. So I think these messages should be very clearly understood by the listeners and hold such understanding in the mind, and of course consciously act when time is right. And I wish everyone all the very best if they are consciously working towards enlightenment as like a conscious, deliberate task. And I wish everyone, I give everyone my blessings. May the Noble Triple Gem bless everyone. Thank you.